Welcome back. Well, that is what we'll be focusing on. That concern raised. Everyone should be concerned, actually. So we've got Major General Henry Ayola here with us. He's a former commander of Special Task Force Operation Safe Haven. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
Well, you know, listening to all those narratives about this, we'll come to that of Ondo specifically, the authorities there as well. When you heard this, even though, well, I mean, having been in the security circle yourself, what were your immediate thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, I wouldn't say it was a surprise because I remember the last time I was on your program, I was identifying the 5 components of banditry in Nigeria. And I said one of the components is Boko Haram and ISIS, ISWAP, who have, under the cover of banditry, clandestinely penetrated and infiltrated every part of the country. And that has shifted their base from the northeast, and in fact the entire operation extended to other parts of the country. So it was, I mean, basically a matter of time as when they will manifest in these different parts of the country. So for me, it wasn't a surprise. If only we took such information seriously, which is known. In fact, I pointed out that the first time their signatures were felt was in the Kankara school attack in Katsina. It was obvious then that this thing has gone beyond, because there are 5 components of banditry right now. And the ones that were, you know, the external ones, and there's what they call the quick opportunity ones, those who organize some some kidnapping just for the gains. They are not part of the other component that is the latest, you know. So it was clear. From that point, we began to see the indices and indicators of Boko Haram and ISWAP. And by the way, when we say ISWAP, we know that ISWAP was a breakaway from Boko Haram. So there's really no difference other than the change of name.
What key elements did you see that gave you that strong indication that this is their signature?
Oh, okay. Very good. If you go back to the Kankara, I think those are 300 and something school children that were picked up then. And, you know, it was at a time where there was this rivalry within ISWAP and Boko Haram. And there was a need to show some presence and show some promise to show that, oh, we have the supremacy. Of course, there are several indices that are associated with them, as different from the typical banditry, you know, that is for gain, that is a clash between, like the one in Zamfara. There's actually a clash between rivalry groups, okay? So all of these differences have been there. Of course, the one of ISWAP and Boko Haram, you can see the nature of the killing, the horrendous kind of killing, not just you know, making a statement. You either be wondering, either they're enjoying an orgy of violence. That's characteristic of Boko Haram and ISWAP.
Now that the FG said in that briefing that they are suspected to be ISWAP, but we will bring them to justice, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I can understand that very well too, because it takes a while to decode. When you put all the indices together, you have a gamut of intelligence input here and there. The intelligence puzzle takes time to resolve, because you may still need one piece of information somewhere that will link up, you know, maybe that missing gap sometimes, you know, before. But of course, as you are piecing the pieces of information you have together, it's just like the jigsaw puzzle. It begins to point in one direction or the other based on the templates that you already have and based on the known habits of the different groups. So I like the way the minister puts it. That's a fine way of putting it, to say it points in that direction or is suspected to be that, because you can't really categorically, you know, say that until you have, you know, done your investigation and your intelligence analysis to a point that you can beat your chest and say, oh, it's so group that did it. Yeah, so that's a safe way of putting it.
Normally, when these groups attack, they also like to claim victory for those kinds of attack. So far, so good. We haven't heard any of the groups come out to say we are the ones behind or responsible for this attack.
Yeah, that's what we call attribution. Attribution usually is followed through where there are doubts as to who could have done it, or where you are dealing with an area that is not known to be held by a particular group, in which case identifying the perpetrators becomes an issue. But in the case where a group has been on ground for a while, and more or less they are in charge of that area, they oftentimes don't have to start attributing, because, I mean, it's not a fresh thing. And it's not a new thing, it's an ongoing thing. It's an attritional war that's been on.
In charge of what area in this thing? Because this is the first time it's happening in Ondo State, or even in the Southwest.
Yes, in this form.
This manner.
Yes.
Yeah, if you look at it, there's a trend. If you remember, when Boko Haram started, this was the pattern. Attacking churches, mosques, IED, explosion and all of that. That was how it happened. And then it graduated to when they now started engaging our troops. Okay, then of course it is the banditry thing that is bringing them back to this old system now. Okay, because now they have come under a different cover. And because, of course, it's smart for them not to attribute right now, because they want to, like the Minister of Interior said, they want to establish some presence, get attention, show some promise that they can, they have some users value to display and all of that.
Or maybe they want a situation whereby the people start to fight themselves as a result of what they have done. Because you can see that the minister also made a very passionate appeal to, the people there, not to ethnicize or make this a religious conflict. Do you think that they're also hoping that this will have further effect, given where they have chosen to carry out this attack? There was plenty of reading. The governor of Ondo State is from Owo. He had a very tough line with herders and forests, etc., etc. And then, the establishment of Amotekun and, a host of other issues. Do you think that they are hoping that this could lead to further conflagration before they finally own up and say, we did it?
Well, it's a possibility, but I would rather think, you made a point. It's similar to what happened in Benue some years ago, when Benue came up with their own anti-grazing law. And they made that point. And in fact, in that case, they came out and said, look, if you don't change that law, we will continue with this attack. Of course, it's also clear in this case that, yes, they see the governor as somebody that has been upfront in defending and securing his people against their own plans. So, I mean, he will be an arch enemy to them, And of course, trying to make a point to say, look, you've been too much against us, let's silence you or something. That could be the case. But in terms of either it's no religious or not, we've long passed that.
But that's why I was asking about the signature.
Yeah.
Because even part of the governor's statements, close to what Mark also raised, is that he said the anti-open grazing law has come to stay. So, and I do remember some research by, I can't remember his name, even though it's late now, where he did say that they usually have this militant wing. That some of those who masquerade as pastoralists, that they may be harmless and everything, but when there's a fight to be undertaken, they reach out to a certain group who come in and carry out this kind of thing. So that's why I asked, what kind of signature? How do we address this?
Yes, thank you very much. I go back. That scenario you painted existed at the time. You see, this thing that is very fluid. The patterns have changed over time. In fact, what is happening now is like a reversal to an old pattern that was prevalent at the time. And that's where it gives serious concern. But the pattern has changed over time, where that kind of scenario is no longer necessary, because we've long passed the stage where we are trying to attribute to know who is doing what. Because this has become a state of, a situation of the nation for a while now. So we know the players already within the arena. There is hardly any new player that is just getting into any of the theaters within the country now. The era where they used to invite people, we've long past that. Because the people to be invited are already here. And they've been with us for a while. So the issue of inviting people to come and fight is a phase that is past already.
All right, let's toss this to Lagos. They've got a guest there as well.
Onyekachi Adekoya is with us here. He's a security consultant. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you've been listening keenly, and I saw almost every point you want to react one way or another. First of all, can we begin from there?
Yeah, thank you very much. We have to be very careful in this country, I would say, not to push a narrative too far. Because what the minister has said is suspected to be ISWAP. The minister has not said categorically it is ISWAP. We asked on ISWAP signature, or what we call their MO, what's their modus of operation. And yes, there are traits and suggestions that would look like it's ISWAP, but clearly it's a terrorist attack. So let's call it a terrorist attack. Who has carried it out, we do not know. The motive could be political, because empirically, we are about the period now where politics makes an already bad security situation worse. Because the numbers suggest that from around this time when the parties have declared their presidential candidates, we begin to see all sorts. Case in point, Ojo, yesterday, violence was reported. So if you begin to track data, incident data, you will see from this period a sustained uptick in cases of armed violence. So let us start from the known. When we approach these kind of issues, what do we know? We know that there's been herders-farmers clashes in Ondo. We know that since the establishment of Amotekun, there's been a lot of back and forth between arrests and, reprisal incidents. We know that for a fact. We know that on the 10th of March, there was a reported school shooting in Akoko Edo, where one school pupil was killed, over 10 injured, when that school was having its inter-house sports. We know that. We know that farmers are now afraid to go to their farms in Ondo State, in some communities around that Owo axis. We know that for a fact. What is the government not telling us? We know that Ondo State has the second largest bitumen deposit in the world. We know that. We know that Owo has one of the finest quality of gold. And there's illegal mining activity going on in Owo. We know that. We know that Ondo State is bordered by 6 states. 4 to the north, 2 to the west. We know for a fact that Ondo State is a cross-section. It's like a hub, a major cannabis hub. The NDLA knows that. So there are a lot of armed criminal groups that are into illicit drugs. There are a lot of armed criminal groups that are into illegal mining. Then you have the herders-farmers clashes. So what is the government not telling us? There's been a failure of security. That we know clearly. So coming out very conveniently to say it is ISWAP.
No, suspected to be. You made that point as well.
Yeah, so you can anchor. When you're making an argument, sometimes you suggest to anchor my mind towards a certain place. So that's called anchoring. So when you say suspected to be ISWAP by the National Security Council, your brain 70% goes is ISWAP.
Is that deflecting in your own opinion?
No, it's just laziness.
Now, looking at all the issues that you have raised, why do such economic opportunities, that one might say, why do they portend insecurity? Why are they such a security threat to the people?
When you say economic opportunities, I'm not sure what you mean by...
You talked about bitumen deposit, you talked about gold and all those other things.
Good question. Why is it an issue in Katsina and Zamfara, where gold is also being mined? Where you have reports of helicopters, at the time government had to issue a no-fly zone in the northwest because there are reports of aircrafts coming in, loading their cargo and going out. The Nigerian law is very funny when you look at what's on the exclusive list and what's on the concurrent list. So we have significant untapped opportunities in the mining sector. Some of the elites are benefiting, according to reports that we have, from illegal mining. We've seen cases of local community chiefs and some other people also benefiting from these illegal activities. So what is the government not telling us? What is this convenient talk about ISWAP? Whether it is ISWAP, Jazz, Boko Haram, bandits, terrorists, we elected a government into office.
Talking about government, there's something that you said earlier that I want us to, piggyback on. And that's the fact that we have become vulnerable to insecurity. And there are those who we have spoken with on this program as well, who have said that we have lost our first line of defense, which is the local government system. Do you see that as something worthy of strengthening to at least maybe by way of some form of first line of defense? Because you talked about the community leaders and all of that. Now, if they had strong enough influence, so to speak, do you think we'll still be as vulnerable as we are?
No, absolutely. You make a very fantastic point because, I'm a major proponent for taking a local approach to security, and I think that's well documented. When we talk about the fabric of society and the fact that the local governments are the third tier of government, they are the ones closest to the people. The federal government can make laws, the state governments can make laws, but only the federal government can enforce laws. When there are cases of, there are three categorizations according to the Criminal Offences Act in defining what a criminal incident is. There are felonies, misdemeanors, there are small offenses. It is only in this type of country that misdemeanors, which are offenses that carry criminal punishments of 3 years to 6 months, that you involve a federal police. Everything is federal police. I can't find my handkerchief, I will have to get the federal police involved.
Well, figuratively, that is.
No, literally and figuratively. If I want to report my phone missing, I have to go to the Nigerian police force, not to a state police, not to a community sheriff. And we say we won't drop the ball. When security is everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility because nobody is directly accountable for it. Which is why we're trying to address an issue, which is why we have a proliferation of vigilante groups across the country. Maybe we can talk about the way forward. But I can take your question. So all I'm saying is, it's too much mental laziness just to come out and say it is ISWAP. And therefore, we all gone away. After all, Nigeria is under attack on every side because it is ISWAP. Where's the local government chairman? They're in war.
But if you tie the economic opportunities in Ondo back to what's happening in Katsina and Zamfara, where there's also gold, then you now have to look at the response of the federal government to this by saying that it looks like ISWAP. So we also have to look at the bearings, which is why I want to ask, Owo is the governor's country home? That's one. The attack was on the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is a universal church. So what are these signatures, using Chimelin's word, saying about the nature and intention of this group that has attacked?
Now, you see, Nigeria is made up of very different interest groups who can go to different lengths to prove a point. What does it take to stage an attack like this and you then begin to enforce this narrative that they want you to enforce? It is the Northerners, one. It is the governors because of Heather Summers clash, two. It is an attack on the Catholic Church. I mean, I was on DWTV, and the narrative was the Christians in the South are being attacked by Islamists from the North. What a beautiful narrative. How convenient. Without conceding that it is ISWAP, we have a sitting governor in Ondo State who perhaps is trying his best. He has done Amoteku within the limits of what the law allows him. But we have a president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If that's not high-sounding enough, I don't know what again is high-sounding. We have different GOCs, brigade commanders, we have NDLA, we have NIA, we have SIB. I could probably run out of names. We have over 26 agencies for security. The bandit camps are known. To your point on economic connection with this thing, I'd always say that these people are not extremists, Islamists, or anything. These are what we call armed criminal groups. And at the heart of the activities is economic interest. Ondo has gas. Ondo has crude oil. Ondo has kaolin. It has perilite. It has gemstone. So follow the connection.
But would you insist on this point if you also related it to what's been said in Ondo State, that
yes.
this is a pilot phase of a planned attack on the entire Southwest?
Yes, you can say that conveniently, but that's not the point what I want to dwell on, because that's pushing a very dangerous narrative in the country. The point I'm making is, because the federal government has not set up our mining sector correctly, you'll be shocked. The Chinese are here mining. The Indians are here. The Russians are here also mining. And we have not deregulated or opened up the mining sector. Therefore, we allow for people to go into these places, and they must protect their turf. Tantalite is being mined in Plateau State. So look at Plateau and the crisis in Plateau. Just follow all the major crisis zones. Yes. And then you find out the major economic interest that is at play in some of those places.
This dangerous narrative, do you want to dismiss it? Because it began in the Northeast,
yes.
and then it crept into the Northwest, and then we now have the Southeast, and now we now have Ondo State. So are you dismissing it?
You cannot absolutely dismiss it. All I'm saying is that if we say it's ISWAP, bandits, terrorists, how many has been prosecuted? How many has been paraded in the open? What exactly is being done? So to say ISWAP, too convenient for me. It's too convenient. It's not ISWAP. Sorry, just to land. Yeah. It is not ISWAP in the Southeast, but there's problem in the Southeast. Yes, ISWAP claimed attacks in Kogi, in Kwara, in Benue, in Taraba recently in the last 2 months. Those places are about 4 hours away from Ondo State. You can't rule it out. But before a problem begins to burgeon, at least it becomes a bit transient and incipient. So there's a point there. But if there are structures in place that are active and responsive, that are local, near to the place of action, we can nip this in the bud quickly. We don't have that. We are playing catch-up in this country. Our attention span is too short. The Abuja train incident happened just how many weeks ago? Now we are in a war.
Right. We're due for a break in about two minutes or thereabouts, but I just want to quickly recap some of the issues you have raised. So essentially you're saying, government saying all these points in the direction of ISWAP is quite convenient.
For them.
You have given the options of politics. In fact, you've talked about cannabis as well, but you also seem to be narrowing it down on the natural resources and all in Ondo State, and drawing similarities with other parts of the country where we've seen those attacks. But Mark, we made a point earlier on that, you know, all of this also has a very convenient, easy outcome, which is, you know, these are the people responsible for it, and then the people in Owo or Ondo will naturally go out there and perhaps take the laws into their hands, as they say. So for Nigerians, especially people in that region, seeing this report, having to deal with that massacre, I mean, that's a term that has been used. How should they receive this? How should they internalize this latest pronouncement and perhaps some other explanations they have heard? How can they approach this?
From the standpoint of the Constitution, security of life and property shall be the primary function of government. The government has failed. Politicians are the ones responsible for all these incidents. Clearly put, whether by
politicians are responsible.
Yes, they are. Whether by omission, whether by neglect, whether by incompetence, whether by failure, there are people elected into office that are responsible for security. That's why we elected them. That's why we gave them our sovereign right of self-defense to collectively, on our behalf, ensure security. And that is failing. People are rushing to arms. Most of the states in the Southwest today, most of the ballet, most of the vigilante groups, are armed. They have to be armed.
But you haven't answered this question. How should the people who have been,
Look,
we'll answer that one
yes.
when we return from this break. Please stay with us.
The attack on St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo is one that will continue to leave a sour taste in the mouth of Nigerians, particularly those in the southwest, for a long time to come. Residents have been lamenting the state of security in the country, with some suggesting ways of salvaging things.
I've heard that something like this has not happened before, so I believe that it's a possibility that even the security operatives or agents were a bit relaxed because this was not anticipated.
People of my age, when we were young, the least thing we think about was security. We can travel at any time of the day. We can live anywhere. We can sleep anywhere. But unfortunately, the story has changed.
Some consider personal safety consciousness as the way to go.
Let the governors of each state, join hands with the federal government. Or the state can have their own state police.
This suggestion is not far from that of elder statesman and former presidential candidate Chief Olufalaye. He's worried that after several protests over previous attacks, nothing has changed.
The least I expect us to do now, before the election, I repeat, before the election, is for every state and local government that can afford it to set up their own police forces immediately. You don't need any constitutional amendment to have state police.
He wants states in the southwest to return to practice in the past, where each native authority controlled its security, that in addition to other apparatus at various levels.
There were 3 police forces that I knew when I was a child in this town. The Nigerian Police Force, the Western Regional Police, headed by Baba Omito Oju, and Akure Constabulary. Every town in Yoruba land, the Western region, had a constabulary or war. Ikare, Ibadan, Oshogbo, Ogumosho, Ilesha. Every town, I repeat, had a police force of its own.
There are fears in some quarters of a repeated attack in other areas across the Sunshine State.
The security agencies should also buckle up. What we are hearing is that they might continue. At the same time, they struck too in Kogi and somewhere in the east. I think we should be very careful.
But the regional security outfit, Amotekun, is asking residents not to entertain any fear.
And by the grace of God, the support of people in terms of timely information to us, it will not happen anywhere in Ondo State again. In fact, it will not happen in the southwest again. And the perpetrators of this act will be brought to book. We've known better now. We've known better. The difference between Amotekun and other agencies is that we deploy both conventional and unconventional security measures.
With this and other assurances from other security agencies, as well as asking for divine intervention, residents hope that this will be the last of unfulfilled promises of arrest and prosecution of perpetrators of such attacks.
Thanks for staying with us. Well, Mr. Adekoya, well, I guess the report further, underscores the importance of the question Kadia asked earlier. There's a young man, a middle-aged man, and an old man who said that when they were growing up, the old man and the middle-aged man, when they were growing up, they didn't have this kind of situation. They never foresaw it. And the young man said he had never heard of it. So hearing this that happened, the people who have to live with the consequences, and the opinion that the federal government has put out now of who is suspected to be behind these attacks, how do the people who have been attacked both emotionally and physically, how do they internalize this? How does it comfort them? Does it comfort them or does it scare them further?
It doesn't provide any comfort to them. It would look to me as a deflection of responsibility. What I would have loved to see is just straight up, this incident occurred, the assailants or attackers are unknown, government is doing XYZ, XYZ. It doesn't help them in any way. And I said, how do they internalize it? Look at it as a failure of government. Don't allow the politicians deflect their responsibilities. We pay them for Christ's sakes to be in office. They must do what they are put in office to do. Thankfully, the northern governors have agreed with the southern governors on the issue of state police. But it has not moved beyond just being espoused. It has not become institutionalized. What is the fear in having state police? We say we don't want a governor to arm a group. Which governor doesn't already have groups that are armed in Nigeria? What can we do to solve this problem? If we have state police, limit them to service pistols, at least shotguns. Declare what amounts to a federal crime, what is a state crime, what can be dealt with by local authorities. If they have only service pistols and shotguns, there will be no match for federal forces that will have certain categorization of assault rifles and special forces. What will be the multiplier effect? Those institutionalized police force will become a force multiplier for our federal forces, who in any case are overstretched. The military has operation in over 31 states. How much more stretching do you want to do this?
In fact, Chief Olufalaye thinks that you don't need the constitution to have state police. You can
go
ahead.
I don't agree.
And do something right now.
You need a constitution to allow you have, because the police, the constitution currently now allows for only the federal government to have a police. So it's not correct. It's convenient to say what the constitution allows within the borders of what it allows is the Amotekun, which they've done, and they only have dane guns or shotguns.
So what constitutional amendment will further empower Amotekun to be more effective within their domain?
The Police Act. The Police Act to share, because you see, the governors are in term quasi-co-sovereigns. When you say you're a governor of a state, you have immunity, you are co-sovereign with the presidency. So they also must have some accountability for security, which is why the Constitution recognizes them as the chief security officers of their state, and they sit over the State Security Council, as the president sits over the federal, the National Security Council. But you have the position in law, you don't have the bite of force. So all I'm saying, and what most people are saying, is like, can we stop playing the ostrich here? We have agreed that Nigeria is overdue for a rejigging of our national security posture. Forget architecture, because there is none. You see, whatever we have is belated. The threat environment has moved so far off from our old dogmas. If you listen to most people, they tell you you can't. People are dying every day. 32 years today, whether it's 50, whether it's 80, we don't know. People are dying every day. So what we're saying is that we are shooting at a moving target. And if you are not flexible and dynamic enough to pursue your target, the target will leave you behind. And security has left the country behind.
So very quickly now, constitutional amendments could be a very long process, albeit an unwieldy one.
Yes. And
constitutional lawyers have in recent times been advocating that state governors test the laws as others have done in the past, i.e. the VAT law, i.e. the VAT dispute, and what's it called again, vehicle license. So do you advocate that state governors should, use the courts to get ahead in this, such that there'll be a semblance of sanity if Amotekun and other state police, whatever it is called, can be empowered within the Southwest jurisdiction?
The interpretation of the law
or any part of the country.
Yeah, the interpretation of the law is very clear, though I'm not a lawyer. It's clear. Only the federal government. So what are you going to test at the Supreme Court? There's nothing. You can't build your case on nothing. Now, what I will say is that the political will to have state police is not there. Leave all the noise we're seeing on air. If the will were there, the northern governors aligned with the southern governors to give the presidency in the APC over to the south. If that same will, political will, were there, what does it take? The governors are the leaders of the parties in their states. The House of Reps, senators are from states. If the will were there, it doesn't take anything. This bill will have been before the president, and the same force of will have forced this thing through. So the will is not there. As a matter of fact, Some of them who have vigilante groups are not paying these people more than 20,000 a month. Some of them don't even pay at all.
Okay. Well, let me ask General Ayola as we take this back to Abuja now. I'm concerned about the personnel that we have to engage to do some of these jobs, General. The policemen, the soldiers that, according to Mr. Adekoya, are operating in about 31 states of the Federation. I'm concerned about whether or not we are giving them due attention enough so that they can be significantly mobilized and motivated to do what they're supposed to do for us. We don't want this to happen again, but this is happening in our faces. We have not really, the dust hasn't settled on the war, and then there's the one that happened yesterday. So I'm wondering how you think we can contend with this, especially the personnel that we have to deploy.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's an important aspect of it all. That brings us to, my brother Adekoya was talking about the security architecture of the nation. I would put it this way, that whatever security architecture we have, maybe we can say it's a default one, in the sense that it will require some deliberate, going back to some fundamentals, like doing fresh risk assessment, vulnerability analysis and threat analysis, reviewing all of that to then revisit and now do a deliberate design that will incorporate some of the self-defense mechanisms at the lower level, at the local government level, in fact, down to the world level, at the state level, so that all of them are incorporated so that the reaction time can be shortened, so that there is a liaison within each level, each tier, and then there is also overlapping responsibility at the lateral levels. So that way, when we can have something that is taking cognizance of the current threats and the current state of the nation security-wise, so that it can handle some of these, what will have been seen as unforeseen in the past, but that have become the norm now. That will help. Now, going back to, strictly to your question, yeah, I had the Inspector General of Police mention that they are passing out about 10,000 police officers, in a way of boosting their strength. Yeah, that's something that has been suggested over time. There is no shortcut to the fact that we need a surge in all our security services that are involved, particularly the armed forces and the police, and maybe the civil defense, who are directly engaged, who are first responders in most of these incidents. So we need to do that because, like you rightly said, the armed forces is already overstretched, so also the police. So even if you have all the best weapons and all of that in the world, you still need men to operate them. You still need men who must be smart at operating the equipment, who must have the competencies to use them effectively and optimally. So all of these are there, and these are things that can only be taken at the federal level. So it boils down to the federal government really giving this its best shot. Because what you tolerate, you cannot change. I think we have not had enough decisive tackling of this situation.
And people must go about their duties. Today is Friday, it's a worship day. People are going to go to mosques to worship. On Sunday, people are going to go to church to worship. I mean, people went innocently last week and, some people got killed. And I'm sure a lot of worshipers are thinking, today and Sunday, what should we be doing?
Yeah, you just reminded me. When I was commanding Operation Safe Haven, we had a standard deployment on Fridays and Sundays to cover all the churches and mosques. It was as bad as that we had to do that to ensure that, in fact, some parts of the roads would be closed. You have, the forces were deployed until those services were over. And that was standard deployment every Friday and every Sunday. Now, I know with the way the armed forces and the police are stretched, now if we have to do that all around where these threats are, for example, that's additional responsibility being given to the armed forces and the police. But if that's one good way of at least giving, the presence of them certainly will reduce, and it will give confidence to the people going to the church. When they see, roadblocks, they see soldiers, they see police. at least give some confidence to them that at least they are safe.
Let's wind down with this because, there were reports yesterday about certain persons who were arrested, but our correspondent reached out to the police trying to find out if they were really those associated with that incident. The police said, well, we can't comment to that because we were not involved. Because I think they said it was the army and the Amotekun that went in to make that arrest. But he tells us now that he spoke to the army PRO, and they said those persons arrested were those suspected to be cultivating Indian hemp. So a lot still hazy.
So it's a totally different issue.
So because they were arrested, they went into the bush and got this kind of these people here. But talking about deployments and trying to find out, even if churches or groups do or take certain measures like installing CCTV cameras, doing what they can, do we have the base, the fundamentals to even identify these people as something we can build on, still referring to the security architecture?
Yeah. You see, when you talk of security architecture, for example, is the entire gamut of security policy, strategies, structures, processes, procedures, drills, routines. It goes through the entire thing. That's why it's called architecture. So down to the lowest level, from the grand strategic level to the lowest tactical level. And that's why I say we need to revisit it, no doubt.
But give just a quick one before we go. Give us a big picture from your perspective. What do you think is really going on?
Well, for me, I can see, I think I warned about this before this political activity started. I said, now that we're going to the political activities, we know that it's going to create a diversion of attention. I mean, inevitably so. And that if we don't put certain preemptive things in place before we get engaged by politics, the adversary will take advantage of that. And that's what we're seeing happening. Because, there's so much you can do in 24 hours, and there's so much you can do with the same set of force that you have, unless you have to expand, So, so the urgency really is about causing a surge both in the armed forces and the police, and doing it as fast as we can, do some emergency recruitment and commissioning, get some additional equipment, the use of technology to make up for some shortfall in manpower in some areas. We have to do all of this, and we have to do them concurrently.
All right, we need to thank you for coming on. Major General Henry Ayola, former commander of Special Task Force Operation Safe Haven. We have to thank you also, Onyekachi Adekoya, security consultant.